And hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the JetFuel podcast, all about Jets football and a big week coming up for the Jets, coming off their first loss of the season last weekend down in Texas, losing to the Dallas Cowboys, and a big divisional rivalry game coming up this Sunday as they take on the New England Patriots. I'm your host of the JetFuel podcast, Keith Harrington, along with me, Kyle Stickles, and of course, Pat Davis. And a big game coming up this week, as I mentioned, with the New England Patriots, divisional rivals, and back home at MetLife Stadium. And if we go and look at the statistics a little bit here, the Jets 1-1, Dallas 2-0, and the Jets looking to get back on the winning side of things against the Patriots. And of course, Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, 0-2. And I've heard some people say he actually looked a little bit better than some people thought. But Pat and Kyle, I've got an interesting story for you real quick. It's amazing how sometimes you just out in public and things fall into your lap that would make something good to share on our show. And so today, after my dad's surgery, Pat and I have talked about my dad having 2 surgeries today. And my mom and I, during his second surgery, went to a fast food chain restaurant to have lunch. And lo and behold, there's an older, gray bearded gentleman waiting for his food who happens to have an old school, vintage New York Jets hat on. And of course, I'll talk with anybody, anytime, any place. So I struck up a conversation and just said, "You a Jets fan?" And he said, "Well, yes, I am." And I said, "Well, I'm the host of a Jets podcast, and I talked about you guys being on with me." And he remembered the draft, Kyle. And he said, "That kid was enthusiastic." He said, so he loved Kyle doing the pick of Will McDonald. But anyway, said he'd been a Jets fan for 55 years. But the cool part about the story is, he said for most of those 55 years, if he was wearing that Jets hat and he was in public, nobody came up to him and commented or asked him about being a Jets fan. But he said this year, when Aaron Rodgers was signed, suddenly everyone was asking him questions about being a Jets fan. And I just thought that was, even though he got injured 4 plays in, and now, who knows how the season's going to go. I just thought it was fascinating that just the signing of an Aaron Rodgers could do so much for the franchise.
Yeah.
This guy for 55 years hasn't been asked a thing. When he's wearing his Jets hat, suddenly everybody wants to talk with him about the New York Jets. So I thought that was a pretty cool story to share to kick off the show here.
Definitely.
So the New England Patriots, we're going to talk about them in a little bit. But first, looking back at the Dallas game, of course, Kyle and Pat, the big story was, how was Zach Wilson going to play? Robert Saleh has sworn his allegiance to Zach Wilson after the loss of Aaron Rodgers. Some people have speculated about other quarterbacks coming in, and it wasn't a great day for Zach Wilson. It wasn't as good a day as it was in that win over Buffalo. 12 for 27, 170 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions, 36 yards rushing as well, but not a great day. So, Kyle, what did you think of Zach Wilson's performance in the Dallas game?
Oh yeah, I thought his performance was pretty good against a really tough Dallas defense. Obviously the first half of the game he was making some pretty good throws out there. The 68-yard touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson, and going into close to halftime, he ran the ball pretty well and got the Jets into field goal range. But I think other than that, I think the Dallas defense was pretty dominant on him, and the whole offense in general, kind of the line not doing that great blocking wise, but I thought he did pretty good for going against a tough Dallas team.
Yeah, their defense, as we found out in the Giants game, is just devastating. I mean, the Giants went down the field on their first drive and looked like, for all the money in the world, they were going to have a shot to win that football game. And then their defense, the Cowboy defense, makes a big play, and that's pretty much it for the Giants in that game. Pat, What'd you think of Zach Wilson?
I think that Zach Wilson had a shaky performance at best. He showed some good things, like Kyle said. I don't blame him for the poor performance. I think a couple of the interceptions, I don't really know how he didn't see the defenders. I think it was just a poor read on his part. Three interceptions in one game. I think it goes back to what we spoke of before. The reason he had such a shaky game was because of the offensive line. And you got to give credit to Dallas Cowboys defensive line, of course. But, we had already said that the New York Jets line had to hold up, and they didn't. So I don't blame him for the poor performance. I think it's more on the offensive line than it is on Zach Wilson.
So that raises the next question. The Jets seem to be pretty pretty set on staying with Zach Wilson, as I mentioned, and Robert Saleh has given him all the confidence in the world, despite the three interceptions, despite the game on Sunday in Dallas. But I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but should the Jets go out and look for an experienced quarterback? I was listening to Mina Kimes the other day, one of my favorite NFL analysts, and she was saying Jacoby Brissett, she thought, was a name that was being tossed around. He played very well, best he's ever played in his career last year in Cleveland. Jameis Winston is still out there backing up Derek Carr in New Orleans. He'd like another opportunity to start. What do you think, Kyle? This is a team that's built to win right now. They got one of the top defenses in the NFL. They've got great weapons on offense. Do they need to go out and find another quarterback, Kyle?
Well, I think it's good to go out and explore options, but I've seen a lot of stuff coming out from Coach Saleh that they aren't really looking to add a quarterback just yet, which I mean, I'm fine. I'm fine with rolling for Zach. I'm rooting for him, and I hope he does well. But sooner or later, one of these weeks, I think they're gonna go out and get a guy. Whether who it is, I don't know, but I'd love to see a guy like Brissett or Jameis Winston out there. I think those are two solid guys right there who can definitely come in and show some winning capability.
Yeah, well, one thing that the Jets have to be looking at is that we've got a lot invested in Zach Wilson. He's a first round draft pick. They probably don't want to quite give up on him this early. But what do you think, Pat? This is a team that had possibly AFC Championship game aspirations, and they're still a potentially championship team. Last year they said we need a quarterback. We're a championship team without a quarterback. Now they lost the quarterback in 4 plays. So they're kind of back to the same situation. So what do you think about it, Pat?
I think, like you said, because he's a first round pick, they're gonna rock with Zach Wilson for a little bit and see how he does. But yeah, I think they need to go out and get a veteran backup quarterback, somebody who hopefully is in shape still, and waiting for the opportunity as this one presents itself. I think also that, as I said before, an experienced backup quarterback is hopefully going to learn the playbook sooner than somebody else. And then there's the other factor that I mentioned about Zach Wilson being mentored by somebody who's already been around the league and has had that type of experience where this guy can learn from them. I think Zach Wilson, like I said, has all the tools. But, like I said before, if the offensive line isn't going to go out and hit somebody in the mouth, he's still going to be running for his life every ball game.
Right, exactly. We talked a lot about, we haven't on this show, but there's been a lot of talked about over with the other team in New York with the Giants, Daniel Jones, not having the offensive line. Some people criticized him that are Giants fans, and a lot of people said it's him. He just doesn't have it. A lot of people say it's the offensive line. Now he showed last week when given the right plays and protected by the line, he can be very, very solid, very, very good. So, maybe we really don't know at this point what Zach Wilson has because he hasn't been given that fair opportunity behind an offensive line that he can really show his talent. Another thing that came up this week, these stats, these are stats that are kind of troubling, if you ask me, especially when you don't have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Stats in the running game for the Jets. I would think that if you also want to have a successful Zach Wilson, you've got to run the football. And Breece Hall, 9 yards, Michael Carter, 8 yards, Dalvin Cook, 7 yards. A total of 24 yards among those three guys. You are not going to win football games with any quarterback with that kind of running game. You're certainly not going to win football games with Aaron Rodgers out and with Zach Wilson playing quarterback, with Breece Hall having 4 touches and 9 yards. And he came out and expressed his displeasure about that this week. And he made some comments about, well, how am I supposed to do anything? I only get 4 touches. What do you think about that, Kyle?
Yeah, I completely agree with Breece on this one. Him only getting 4 touches that whole game completely shocked me. I thought they were going into that game and gonna give him the ball 100 times that day, especially seeing his performance against Buffalo. You better be giving that dude the ball because
Right.
he can play. And even from coming back from his ACL tear last year, he's shown that he can still play at a very high level, even with poor blocking sometimes. He can absolutely go out there and change the game completely.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to go the distance. I once coached with a high school coach who used to say, every play we run is designed to score a touchdown. And he said, unfortunately, every defense they put against us is designed to stop us from scoring a touchdown. But Breece Hall is one of those guys that anytime you get the ball in his hands, he's a threat to break a big one. And then we give him the ball 4 times. That just, when you don't have your star quarterback, I mean, that just didn't make sense to me. What do you think about that, Pat?
I think they definitely should have stayed with the run a lot longer. They gave up early in the game on the run, like you said, with a Breece Hall and a Dalvin Cook in the backfield. There's no reason why you don't at least try to run the ball, at least for the first half, and see what happens. I think that going away from the running game was one thing, but there's an unwritten rule that you're not supposed to say things publicly. Everything should stay in house, at least for the time being. I think that he should have gone to his position coach and maybe even Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator, and maybe said some things about not getting the ball too much. And then if you're still not satisfied, then you talk to the head coach. But you never speak out publicly, after the first situation happens. And I think that that's the only bad thing. I mean, this guy is definitely a talent. He was almost the offensive rookie of the year last year if he hadn't torn his knee up. So, yeah, I definitely think he has the right to say something, but maybe just keep it in-house instead of going public.
Right, I agree. And you've been there in a locker room in the NFL, Pat. Are these signs already that things are unraveling and only going into the 3rd week with the Jets?
I'm hoping that they're not unraveling. I mean, like you said, it's only been 2 games. They're only 1-1. It's a long season. I think part of the unraveling, though, Keith, even came, when they saw Aaron Rodgers go down on that turf. So I think a little was already unraveled in the fact that they realized that he was going to be out for the season. But they seem like, you spoke of earlier, them sticking with Zach Wilson, and they've made comments in the media this week about, he's their guy. So hopefully they go out and play a little better for him. It was nice to see some other guys get mentioned in the stats this week. Solomon Thomas had a better game. So I think they still have the talent to still go into the playoffs if they just calm everything down. I think that this guy, Zach Wilson, has a lot of talent and they can be a good team still.
Yeah, we've seen it before. How many people thought Brock Purdy was going to have the success last year in San Francisco, right? And, that's just one example of, we've seen many times. One that sticks out in my mind is Trent Dilfer when he was with the Baltimore Ravens and took them to a Super Bowl. There's been many quarterbacks out there that didn't have to be superstars, that just had to manage things and not make mistakes, that have gone very far with their teams. And everybody's got to be hoping that Zach Wilson can turn into that for the rest of the season for the New York Jets. But what solves everything? Winning. And the New England Patriots come into MetLife Stadium this Sunday, and a win would cure all the ills of the New York Jets. And we're going to talk about the game coming up this weekend, division rivalry game, the New York Jets hosting the New England Patriots. And we'll talk about that right after this on the Jet Fuel Podcast. And welcome back to Jet Fuel, the New York Jets podcast. I'm your host, Keith Harrington, along with Kyle Stickles and Pat Davis. And as I said before the break, you've got the New England Patriots coming in for a big division rivalry game. Bill Belichick has to be a little bit fit to be tied right now. His team 0-2. It's been, like 20 years or something like that since the Patriots have started the season 0-2. And there's nothing they'd like to do more than beat the rival New York Jets at MetLife Stadium this weekend. And for the Jets, a chance to cure any ills that might have developed, and hopefully with a steady dose of Breece Hall on Sunday against the Patriots. So, Kyle, after watching the first two games of the season, I don't know if you've got a chance to see the Patriots much. I've seen a little bit of their two games so far. What do the Jets need to do? What do they need to clean up here to beat the Patriots at home this Sunday?
First of all, I think they definitely need to get the offensive line back in shape, back blocking better. And also the defense needs to step it up a little, I think, too. As we saw against Dallas, they weren't that great against Dallas. They were letting a lot of catches go by CeeDee Lamb, not covering well. And the biggest one is that dropped interception by Sauce Gardner that would have been returned for a pick six, which could have possibly changed the whole outlook on that game. But both the defense and offense equally have to step up.
Yeah, and when you look at the Patriots roster, I'm going to share some Patriots stats here in just a little bit, but nobody on that Patriots roster is somebody that jumps off the paper, jumps off the stat sheet and scares you. But still, they played decent against Philadelphia. They played Miami relatively tough. I think they've surprised people how well they played. What do you think the Jets have to do to take down New England, Pat, on Sunday?
I think, like Kyle said, the offense has to play better. They definitely have to run block better. I think they have to stick with the running game more. Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook definitely need to get more touches. Mike Carter needs to be put in the game more. I think on defense, I agree with Kyle. They need to step up the defense a little bit, but I also think that the defense didn't play that poorly against Dallas. I think that when Dallas really needed to score a touchdown, the Jets were able to hold them. I mean, a lot of those 30 points were field goals more than touchdowns. So, it wasn't like, they weren't able to stop Dallas when they really needed to. But at the same time, they weren't getting enough push. And I agree with Kyle. They need to step up their game this week and play a little tougher. And I also agree with you, Keith, in that you're not playing the Cowboys this week either. The New England Patriots are not the same New England Patriots team, but it is, an interdivision rivalry. So, that makes it tough in itself. But it's good that the Jets are home after a 1-1 and after a loss. So it's good for them to come home and be comfortable again and go ahead and get a big win.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats here from New England against Miami on Sunday, Mac Jones was 31 of 42 for 231 yards. He had a touchdown pass, and he threw one pick. On the ground, they were basically shut down by Miami on the ground. Ramondre Stevenson, 15 carries for 50 yards, was their leading rusher. He also had a score. And then the age-old veteran here, former Dolphin actually, playing against his old team, Devontae Parker, with 6 receptions for a whopping 57 yards. So when you've got an elite defense like the Jets have, and, as we said, you're not going against Dak Prescott or Frank Pollard or, Brandon Cooks. Cooks didn't play anyway in that game, but CeeDee Lamb or whoever. Devontae Parker, Ramondre Stevenson, and Mac Jones are not those guys. So this is a game that the Jets defense should dominate. And, we talk about the Jets running the ball. 31-year-old Raheem Mostert. Most of us remember some good years with the 49ers. He's in Miami now. He had 18 carries for 120 yards, 121 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I think that shows that you can run the football on the Patriots. Of course, big difference there, Pat. You know about this. It's a lot different trying to run the ball against a team with Tua Tagovailoa, right, than against a team with a young, inexperienced quarterback in Zach Wilson, because they're going to stack the box.
Yeah, well, I think, like you said, it's still a chance for them to get the running game going, and I don't see a lot of positive things on defense for New England. Bill Belichick always seems to find a way to get his players to play at a certain level, regardless of the talent that they may or may not have. And I think that he's a good coach in finding the players that fit into his schemes. But so far this year, they really just haven't shown anything that's been, good enough to think that they're going to be one of those good Patriot teams. I just don't see it. I don't see the Jets losing this game at all.
All right. Well, Jets fans, let's hope that turns out to be the case, because there's a big difference between 2-1 and 1-2 right now, especially with the Kansas City Chiefs lurking just around the corner. So very big game for the Jets. Don't want to say a must win yet, but certainly a big game for the Jets, division game, and showing they can win another one with Zach Wilson, showing they can get to 2-1 would be huge. We're going to take a break right now. We come back, a new segment for you here on Jet Fuel. We're going to take a look at all the 2-0 teams after the first 2 weeks of NFL action, who we think are the pretenders and the contenders. Coming up next, this is Jet Fuel. And welcome back to Jet Fuel. Keith Harrington, Kyle Stickles, Pat Davis. And now that we've looked back at the Jets against Dallas, that loss to the Cowboys on Sunday, and looked ahead to the New England Patriots coming to MetLife this coming Sunday, we're going to try something new here on Jet Fuel. We're going to take a look at the 2-0 teams in the NFL right now, and we're going to talk about whether we think they're contenders or pretenders. And we're going to start with the 2-0 Dallas Cowboys. And obviously, I think they're a contender. Right now, they may be the best team. You could argue them or San Francisco in the NFC. Strong defense. Pollard running the ball well. Seems to be an upgrade at running back this year for them. CD Lamb, Brandon Cooks. Definitely a contender. Dallas, what do you think, Kyle?
I think definitely a contender too. Micah Parsons leading that defense. That's scary just watching. And I think the offense too, just a great all around. So
what do you think, Pat? They've only taken on the 2 New York teams so far, but pretty darn impressive in those games.
Yeah, definitely a contender, Keith. Good offense so far, good defense so far, good skilled players. I think the road goes through Dallas or Philadelphia in that division. So definitely a contender.
Next, the Washington Redskins. They've got to be one of the big surprises, if not the biggest surprise, to be 2-0. The rookie Sam Howell at quarterback. Questions whether he's good enough to take them to another level. And he's got a great offensive coordinator there, and Eric Bieniemy, who came over from Kansas City. He's showing that his system works as well with less talent in Washington as it did in Kansas City. What do you think? I think they're a pretender right now. I think they're a year away. They're certainly an improved team, but I don't see them being a playoff team in a division with Dallas and Philadelphia. What do you say, Kyle?
yeah, I gotta agree with you, Keith. I think give it like a year or two, and I think they'll be up there contending a lot. But definitely surprised me seeing them being 2-0. I didn't expect that at the very beginning of the season, but even just seeing, I think it was Sam Howell's stats, like over 500 yards passing Sunday. They look pretty good.
Right. We're all wishing he was on our fantasy team after that performance, right? We all would have won our fantasy games. No doubt about it. Pat, what do you think about the Washington Commanders?
Commanders, I think, like you said, Sam Howell is playing really well. I like the way Chase Young is playing right now. I think he's having a great season. I like Eric Bieniemy calling the plays also, but I'm going to go with you too, and I'm going to say that they are pretenders.
The Philadelphia Eagles, I think this is a no-brainer right here. NFC champions last year, went to the Super Bowl, strong on both sides of the ball. Jalen Hurts, very accurate quarterback, has gone from being a so-so quarterback to being a superstar almost overnight. Got one of the best receiving tandems in the league. This is definitely a team, as Pat already said. It looks like the NFC title could go through Dallas or Philadelphia. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, Philadelphia is definitely contenders too. Obviously, they're great on every side of the ball. Their O line is a top tier O line, really good receiver tandem and defense. So
Pat?
Yeah, Philadelphia is definitely a contender, Keith. Like I said before, the playoffs either go through Dallas or they go through Philadelphia. But Philadelphia has a team that's even better, in my opinion, than last year. They lost a couple players in the secondary, but they still got some other good players like Blankenship that's come along and been really good. So I'm going to definitely say contender.
Another team I think, that could be the team that the NFC title goes through if it doesn't go through Dallas or Philadelphia is San Francisco, the 49ers. Brock Purdy, a great game manager. Christian McCaffrey, they got Ayuk, they've got Debo Samuel, George Kittle at tight end, the defense led by Bosa. This is an impressive team so far here in the early going. They are definitely a contender, Kyle.
yeah, same here. I definitely think they're a contender too. They look great all around. Their defense is really good. You got McCaffrey, who's looking like his old Carolina self. Uh, Hopefully he doesn't get injured at all during the season. But even Ayuk too, he's having a breakout year too. I think they're gonna be really good.
How about you, Pat? What do you say about the San Francisco 49ers?
Yeah, everything you guys said is right on the ball. They are definitely contenders, and I think if you're going deep into the playoffs, past the division win, if you become the division champ, that's who you're going to end up facing. So, yeah, definitely a contender.
Atlanta, the Falcons, 2-0, an up and coming team. They're improving. They've come a long ways. I don't think they're there yet. I don't know if Desmond Ritter can bring them to a playoff situation, but they've got things going in the right direction, no doubt about it. But for now, they're still a pretender. Kyle?
Yeah, I think they're pretenders for now. Uh, but as the Washington Commanders too, I think give it a few more years and I think they'll be up there. Bijan Robinson coming in. I've seen some highlights of him so far. He looks really good, but I I don't know either about Desmond Ritter. I don't know if he could get the job done, but I'd say give it a few more years and they'll be contenders.
Okay, Pat, how about the Atlanta Falcons?
Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to say they're pretenders too, Keith. I think that, they always seem to start out really well. And unfortunately, by the end of the season, it's a skeleton crew. They usually have a lot of injuries. So I'm going to say that I hope they all stay healthy, but I'm going to consider them pretenders.
Next up, Tampa Bay, the Buccaneers, 2-0 with, yes, Baker Mayfield at the helm. They're in a weak division, which helps them, and they've beaten two weaker opponents so far. I don't see Baker Mayfield leading this team to the playoffs. They are a pretender, no doubt about it in my mind. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, obviously what you said, they played two weak teams so far, and uh, Baker Mayfield, he hasn't been so great lately on in his career, so I don't know what to expect from them, but I'd say pretenders.
All right, Pat, what do you think about Baker Mayfield and the Bucks?
I think I'm going to agree with you guys. I'm not a big Baker Mayfield person. I think he is playing a lot better than people expected him. I like Sean Tucker as the backup running back from Syracuse, who I had mentioned earlier and wanted to see a few games ago. But yeah, I'm going to go with a pretender too.
That brings us to the New Orleans Saints. I might surprise people a little bit. We've been all pretty much chalk across the board here, which we tend to be, it seems like, when we're doing these kind of things. But I think New Orleans is a surprise team. I think they could be a contender, not to win the Super Bowl or anything like that. I mean, you've got Philadelphia, San Francisco, Dallas. This team is better than people think they are. Derek Carr is playing great. They've got a good defense, solid weapons all around. One of the best catches I've ever seen by Chris Olave the other day. If they get Alvin Kamara back soon, this team, I think, is a contender. I think they're going to surprise people. What do you think, Kyle?
Uh, Here I'm gonna have to go pretender. I don't really know who they played first week. I think it was Tennessee, but uh, obviously some weaker opponents so far, and I don't know what to expect from Derek Carr going forward this season. So for now, I'm gonna have to say pretender.
All right, Pat, the New Orleans Saints.
I'm going to pick pretender too. I don't know if Derek Carr gets it done. I know he made a few mistakes last game and then tried to rectify them later in the ball game. They came out with a win. But I'm going to say pretender also.
All right, next up, pretty simple one in my mind, the Miami Dolphins. Right now, I think, along with Kansas City and maybe an edge over Kansas City right now, I think they're the team to beat the AFC. I think this has got Super Bowl written all over them. Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert seems to have, got a second wind here in his career, is putting up huge numbers, a strong defense. Miami is, I think, the favorite right now. So they're definitely a contender. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Contenders definitely. I think they're the team to beat as well in the AFC. They look really good on offense and defense, but especially just seeing a healthy Tua out there is pretty scary as the Jets being part of the AFC East. So we'll have to see come Black Friday.
Yeah, the
But
big
for
thing
now,
there is going to be, yeah, go ahead. For now, you're going to say they're a contender.
yeah.
Yeah. So the big thing there, you pointed to it, Kyle, is Tua staying healthy. If not, who knows how this season will go? But they're definitely, I think, the team to beat in the AFC. What do you think, Pat?
Hmm.
I agree with you both. But yeah, it is about Tua staying healthy. Otherwise, they've just got too much talent for them not to be a contender. Hill and a couple of the other receivers, like you mentioned, are just too good for them to be pretenders. They're definitely contenders.
Last team on our list here, the Baltimore Ravens. And I might surprise people a little bit here. We'll see what you think, Kyle and Pat. I'm going to say that even though they're 2-0, they are definitely pretenders. They got to win over Cincinnati. I get it. But, on the opening weekend, Lamar Jackson did not have good numbers at all. He does not have great weapons around him. Who knows what's going on with Odell Beckham? And that first week, they had J.K. Dobbins still until he got injured late in the game. Now he's done for the season, it looks like. Beckham not even a factor so far. And again, it seems like Lamar Jackson's biggest complaint has always been, give me some weapons. That was a big story back during the summer. And he doesn't have many weapons. And the ones that he does have aren't useful to him right now. So I think they're pretenders. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with pretenders here too. Uh, Obviously, the big thing is Lamar staying healthy, which he's healthy right now, but who knows if he can manage to stay healthy during the season. I know he was hurt a lot of last season. OBJ going down just recently, and J.K. Dobbins tearing his ACL or Achilles week 1. So those are both pretty big losses for him on offense. And just in general, I think the Ravens have a tough time staying healthy. So
All right. So what do you think, Pat? Pretenders or contenders, the Baltimore Ravens?
I would like to say contenders because of Lamar Jackson, but I think, like you guys said, a lot of injuries and sometimes just not having the same overall talent as the other teams. They seem to be able to compete in their division because they always have a decent defense, but don't really score a lot of points. But I'm still going to go with Pretenders also.
All right, great. Well, a few weeks down the road, we'll be able to see which of the teams we thought are going to be pretenders were exposed, turned out to be pretenders, and which teams we predicted would be contenders are still in the hunt to win divisions, to win their respective conferences, and to possibly get to a Super Bowl. And of course, we want to talk about the JetFuel podcast. We have great causes that we like to help out. The Make-A-Wish Foundation that made it possible for Kyle to announce Will McDonald as the Jets' first-round draft pick, and also ALS, which Pat is familiar with through his son Kyle. So usually when we post these podcasts, we've got links down at the bottom where people can go out and learn more about these things and learn more about how to help. And that's a big part of what we're about and what we're here for with the JetFuel podcast. So if you see links on our podcast for those causes, please reach out and help out. We'd all certainly appreciate it here at the JetFuel podcast. So that's going to wrap it up. Kyle, have a great week. Back to school, right, buddy? How's, keeping you busy, I'm sure. You look a little weary there tonight. You got the old homework thing going?
Yep, a lot of homework nowadays in high school.
Right. And Pat, you're trying to get back to work, so we wish you well, buddy.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks everybody for watching the JetFuel podcast episode for this week. And next week we'll talk about how things went between the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. I'm your host, Keith Harrington, saying so long for Kyle Stickles and Pat Davis. This has been the JetFuel podcast.